The girl behind the furnace started in silence, the kind that hums loud inside your ears, a heavy stillness that made every creak of the house feel like a scream. The rain had just stopped and the lights flickered as if the air itself was afraid of what was about to happen. 9-year-old Eden was the last to be found in their cousin's old farmhouse during their midnight hide-and-seek game. He thought he had found the perfect spot, the dusty basement behind the broken furnace. The air there was cold and heavy, and something about it made his chest tighten. But he crouched low, pulling his hoodie over his head, and waited in the dark, his heart thudding louder than footsteps above. Minutes passed, then more. The others were laughing upstairs, but no one came for him. No one even called his name. He waited, breathing, slowly counting backward from 50 to calm his nerves until he heard it's something moving beside him, slow shuffling, and then a soft inhale that was not his. He froze, afraid to turn his head. The space behind the furnace was barely wide enough for him, but someone else was there, someone who whispered right next to his ear in a voice dry and broken, "You should not be here." He shot out of the space without a sound, running up the basement stairs 2 at a time, only to find the living room empty. The laughter gone, the lights off, the windows covered in condensation, like the house was holding its breath. Called for his cousins, for his older brother, but got no answer. Just the ticking of the wall clock and the soft tapping of rain returning. He backed toward the hallway, calling again, until the basement door slammed shut behind him without wind. Without warning, his breath caught in his throat as he turned slowly and saw her standing at the end of the hallway, her hair dripping wet, her face pale, and eyes wide like they were stuck open. Her dress clung to her like it had been soaked in mud, and her arms hung by her side like they had forgotten how to move. She looked about his age, but there was something wrong, something off. Not just with her face, but with the way the walls seemed to bend slightly around her, like the house was leaning in to listen. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. She lifted one hand slowly and pointed toward the basement door, shaking her head like she was begging him not to go back, not to look, not to ask. Then she vanished. No scream, no footsteps, no sound, just gone like she was never there. But the water she left behind, soaked into the carpet, still real, still cold. Aiden backed into the kitchen, tears stinging his eyes, too afraid to run, too frozen to breathe. He grabbed the old house phone and pressed it to his ear, but it was dead. No dial tone, no static, nothing. Then the lights flickered again, and the voice came back, this time from the vent above him, deep, broken, whispering, "Come back, come back, come back. You're not finished hiding." He dropped the phone and bolted toward the front door, but it would not open. None of them would, as if the house had changed its mind about letting him leave. The walls seemed closer, the air heavier, and then he heard his brother finally calling from upstairs, his voice shaking. Eddie again ran up the stairs 2 at a time, throwing open the bedroom door, and there they were, his cousins huddled together in the corner, pale and crying, his brother standing between them and the closet with a chair raised in one hand like he was ready to fight. He turned and saw Aiden, eyes wide, as if he had just seen a ghost. "You were supposed to be gone. We looked for you for hours. We heard you whispering from the closet." Aiden shook his head. "I was in the basement hiding. I heard her." His brother lowered the chair slowly, his voice barely a whisper. "Who did you see?" Before Eden could answer, the closet door creaked open on its own, and from the darkness came that same voice again, soft, broken, too close to be imagined. "Not you, not you, not you." Then the room dropped into cold silence, and the lights died again. The closet that never closed. The darkness pressed on them like a living thing, thick and suffocating. Aiden reached for his brother, but his hand found only empty air. The room had changed somehow. The walls felt closer, and the floor creaked beneath his feet, as if something heavy now stood beside him, breathing slow and wet. He whispered his brother's name, but the silence swallowed it. The cousins had vanished, or maybe they had never been there at all. He backed away from the open closet door, heart thudding like a drum in a coffin. The air smelled of rust and wet dirt, and something older, something sour and wrong. Eden tried to reach the hallway, but the door would not open. His fingers fumbled at the knob as the whisper returned, louder now, almost angry. "You are not done. You cannot leave until the game ends." turned and the closet was no longer empty. A pale hand slid out, gripping the frame. Its fingers long and bent in ways that broke logic. Then another hand, and slowly a face emerged, eyes wide and hollow, skin gray and stretched too tight over its skull. It was the girl again, or something wearing her face. She stepped into the room, but her feet did not touch the floor. Her body dragged forward like a marionette. Forgotten by its puppeteer, her voice came from everywhere and nowhere. I waited, I counted, but you never came to find me. Eden stumbled backward, knocking over a small shelf, books and toys crashing to the ground. But no one came, not his cousins, not his brother. The house had swallowed them or hidden them like toys placed in a box too deep to reach. Screamed, but his voice cracked and died in his throat. She moved closer, eyes locked on his, her mouth opening wider than humanly possible. Her voice twisted. I played fair. I played alone. Now it is your turn to hide forever. Suddenly, the door behind him burst open. His brother's hand grabbed his arm and yanked him into the hallway. They ran without speaking, feet pounding on the wooden floor. Behind them, the thing gave chase, its steps dragging loud and wet, as if it pulled its own weight across the world. Down the stairs, across the kitchen, through the broken back door. They ran into the yard, the rain falling again, cold and blinding, the mud thick around their shoes. As they reached the tree line, Eden dared to look back. The girl stood in the doorway of the house, her face blank, her arms hanging limp as the shadows behind her seemed to pulse and breathe like the house itself was alive and watching. Her eyes never blinked as she whispered through the rain, I see you, I see you, I see you. They kept running through the trees, branches clawing at their skin, until the house vanished from view. They reached the edge of the woods and collapsed near the old broken fence, gasping for air, their hearts thundering in unison. His brother spoke first, voice shaking. I told you we should never come here. This place was never ours. It belongs to them. Now Eden looked at him, confused. Them? Who? What was that? His brother wiped mud from his face and stared at the treetops as if expecting them to move. When we were little, I hid in that same basement. I heard her voice too. I thought it was just my imagination, but then I saw her. She followed me for weeks. I never told anyone. He paused, shaking his head. I thought it ended when we moved, but she waits every game, every round of hide and seek. She waits for someone to come back. As Eden felt the cold sink deeper into his bones, the realization hitting him like a wave. She was never playing. She was trapped, waiting for someone to free her or replace her. Suddenly a new voice echoed through the trees, their cousin crying out from the direction of the house, screaming for help without thinking. Eden stood to run, but his brother grabbed him, pulling him back. No, you go there. You take her place. She only needs one. She never lets go until the game is over. Eden hesitated. The scream came again, this time weaker, more desperate, the sound of someone being pulled under. Then silence. Only the rain remained falling like cold needles against their skin. His brother stood slowly and turned toward the trees, his eyes distant. If we go back, one of us stays forever. Then the whisper returned, softer this time, patient like a lullaby. I see you still hiding, but not for long. One who stays. The sky had turned the color of ash as Eden stood frozen between the forest and the house. The silence felt deeper, now like the earth itself had stopped breathing. His brother stared ahead, eyes fixed on the place where their cousin's scream had died, as if he could see something Eden could not. We have to go back, Eden said, voice barely more than a breath. She has him. We cannot just leave him. His brother shook his head slowly. If we go back, she will take one of us. And this time she will not let go, not until someone chooses to stay. Eden looked down at his muddy hands, shaking, the words echoing in his mind. Someone chooses to stay. She was not just playing, she was trapping, she was hunting. She needed someone alone, afraid, willing to hide, willing to disappear. He turned his eyes back to the broken farmhouse, its windows no longer glowing, its door slightly open, as if waiting. The trees around it leaned in like spectators, hungry for the next move. The girl had changed the rules of the game, and now she was winning. I will go, Eden whispered. I will distract her. You find him, bring him back, get him out. No one else should be lost. Before his brother could stop him. Aiden took off running, his feet slipping in the wet grass, heart pounding like thunder in his chest. The house loomed larger with every step, its shadows reaching for him like fingers made of night. He stepped inside and the door shut. Behind him the air turned thick like syrup, and the hallway stretched longer than it should have. The wallpaper peeled as if the house itself was shedding its skin, and the walls whispered his name over and over, soft and broken. He moved toward the stairs, calling his cousin's name. The sound died, quickly swallowed by the dark. Something moved above him, slow and deliberate, like a hand dragging across the ceiling. He climbed the stairs, each step colder than the last, until he reached the hallway. At the end of it, the closet door stood wide open, and inside sat the girl, her knees pulled to her chest, her head down, hair hanging like wet ropes over her face. She did not move, but her voice filled the hallway anyway. I was just a child too. No one found me. No one came when I screamed. I waited. I counted. I begged. Eden stepped closer, his throat dry, his legs trembling. Who are you? Why are you doing this? Her head tilted slightly, not to look at him, but as if listening to something else. Maybe the house, maybe the memory of what happened. They locked the door and told me to be quiet. They said it was just a game, just pretend. But I knew I would never come out. I waited in the dark until I forgot how to breathe, until I forgot my name. I only remember the rules. Now hide and seek forever and ever, until someone takes my place. At Eden felt tears burn his eyes. The pain in her voice was real, too real. He could almost see her past. In the peeling walls, in the cold floor, in the silence that followed every heartbeat. She was not a ghost. She was a wound that never healed you. Do not have to keep playing, he said gently. You are not alone anymore. We can help you. She lifted her head slowly, and for a moment her eyes were not hollow, her face not twisted. She looked like a child again, scared, lost, and tired. But then the light flickered, and the shadows twisted, and her voice turned sharp. No, you do not understand. The game never ends, it only changes. It always needs one in the dark, one to wait, one to scream. Suddenly, the walls began to close in the hallway, shrinking, the air buzzing with static and the sound of footsteps pounding up the stairs. Eden turned and saw his brother holding their cousin, his face pale and eyes wide. She is coming. We have to go now. They ran together, the house fighting every step, the floorboards cracking, the doors slamming, the girl's voice rising in rage and sorrow. Do not leave me, do not leave me again. I waited so long. They reached the front door and pulled it open. Light poured in, and Eden turned one last time. The girl stood at the top of the stairs, her eyes glowing, her hands reaching out, not in anger, but in pleading. Eden stepped back into the light. The door slammed shut behind them, and the sound of laughter echoed through the trees. Laughter that turned into a scream that faded into silence. His cousin collapsed in the grass, sobbing. His brother dropped beside him, shaking, and for a long time none of them spoke. Then Eden whispered, she is still playing, and one day someone else will hide, and the house will still be there waiting. The girl who was buried standing. The next morning the farmhouse looked different, the sky above it clear, the paint no longer peeling, the windows clean and reflecting blue, like nothing had ever happened, like no screams had filled the night, like no child had ever gone missing. Eden sat at the edge of the woods watching it, not speaking, not blinking. The cold from last night still wrapped around his bones. His cousin lay asleep nearby, safe for now, but not untouched. His brother paced behind him, silent and tense, like he too had heard something more than what was shown. We have to end it, Eden said quietly. This is not a haunting, it is a hunger. And she is still inside, still waiting, still playing. His brother stopped walking, his eyes locked on the house. You felt it too, right? When she looked at you, that last moment, it was not anger. It was something else. It was pain, Eden whispered. It was a memory she cannot let go of. They made their way into town to speak with the oldest person. They could find an old woman who had lived there longer than anyone else. Her hands shook as she poured them tea, her voice thin as paper. But when they mentioned the farmhouse, she went still as stone. That house, she said slowly, used to belong to the Mallorys. They had a daughter, Lila, quiet girl, always hiding behind furniture, always watching. Never speaking much, one day she vanished, just gone. They searched the woods, the lake, even dug up parts of the land, thinking maybe an animal took her. But nothing was found. They eaten. Leaned forward. No one ever found her, not even her body. The woman nodded slowly, then frowned. There was something strange though. Years later, when they rebuilt the basement, they found a space behind the old furnace. Small enough for a child to hide in, but inside they found only a doll and scratch marks on the stone wall. Like someone had tried to claw their way out. The teacup slipped from Aiden's hand, but he did not notice, his mind already racing. The voice, the whispers, the girl in the shadows. It had been Leela all along, and she never left because no one ever came for her. No one ever opened the door. No one ever ended the game. They returned to the house that night. The cousin left behind with neighbors who knew nothing of what had happened to Eden and his brother stood outside the farmhouse, cold wind pressing against their backs. This time there would be no hiding. This time they would seek. They stepped through the front door and the air changed again. The lights flickered, but the house remained silent, waiting like a trap half sprung. They moved through the kitchen down into the basement. The air grew heavy, the shadows deeper behind the furnace. The space still stood untouched, and in that silence, Eden spoke gently. Lila, we are here. We came back. The game is over. Nothing answered at first, then slowly. From the shadows her voice came, soft and broken. Not over, not yet. You left me, you forgot. No. Eden whispered, we remember now, and we will not leave you alone again. She stepped from the dark, her face no longer twisted, but tears streaked her hands, trembling. Her feet bare and covered in dust. She looked at them like a lost child seeing home for the first time in years. But then the house groaned to the floor beneath them, cracking, the furnace shaking violently. Something deeper inside the walls waking, something angry. She looked around, eyes wide. He is coming, she whispered. He does not like the game ending. Before they could ask, a shape emerged from the wall itself, a figure tall and shadowed. Its face a mask of void, its limbs long and cracked like old wood. The true monster behind the curse, not Lila, but the thing that fed off her pain, that kept her trapped in endless hide and seek it, reached for her, and she screamed, a sound that shook the house. Eden grabbed her hand, pulling her close. His brother swung a crowbar at the thing, but it passed through like smoke. The shadows closed and the walls buckled, and from deep below came the sound of children crying, hundreds, maybe more, trapped voices echoing across time and stone. Eden turned to her. Lila, you have to end it. You have to stop hiding. You have to let go. She looked into his eyes and nodded, then stepped into the center of the room, raised her hands, and screamed one last time, not in fear, but in defiance. The shadows shattered, the air shook. The walls cracked, light poured from the furnace door like fire and wind, and then silence. Just silence. They woke outside in the grass. The farmhouse gone, only a field left behind, as if it had never been built. Only the doll remained in Aiden's hand. Its eyes closed, its face calm. The game was over. The game is over. The field stood quiet under the morning sun, soft winds moving through the tall grass where the farmhouse once stood. Aiden sat with the doll in his lap, his brother beside him, both of them staring at the emptiness that now held the weight of everything they had survived. For a long time they said nothing, only listened to the wind, as if it carried the voice of the girl who had finally stopped whispering. She is gone, Aiden said. At last, his voice thin but steady. She is free. His brother nodded slowly, his eyes red, his hands shaking. She was just a child trapped alone. No one came for her, until now. Again looked at the doll, its tiny dress stitched with faded flowers, its eyes closed as if asleep. It felt warm in his hand, not from sun, not from touch, but from something else, something that had been held for too long and was now letting go. Do you think she is at peace now? He asked quietly. His brother answered without hesitation. Yes, I think she waited for someone to remember her, to call her name, to choose her over fear. And now the house is gone because the curse is gone. Too, they stood up together, dusted off the dirt from their clothes, and turned away from the field. The past behind them, but the memory still burning in their hearts, not as terror, but as truth back. In town, the cousin was waiting, pale but unharmed, his eyes still searching corners, his voice still quiet. But when he saw the doll, he smiled a little and said, "I dreamed about her. She was standing in the light. She was not alone at Eden." Held the doll close, knowing now that some stories are not just nightmares, but echoes that refuse to fade until someone listens, until someone cares. The town never spoke of the house again. The land remained empty, the woods slowly reclaiming it, as if even the earth was trying to forget. But the boys remembered, and they made sure others did too, not to scare, not to haunt, but to honor. Years passed and Aiden grew older. His brother moved to another town, and the cousin found peace in quiet places. But again kept the doll on a shelf beside his bed, not as a trophy, but as a promise. He wrote the story in journals, told it in quiet talks to those who felt unseen, to children who whispered to walls when no one was watching. He made sure they knew they were not alone, that someone would come for them, that no one should ever be left behind in the dark. One evening, a girl knocked on his door, eyes wide with fear, voice trembling. She said, "My brother plays hide and seek at night. He says a girl wants to play too, and she will not let him leave Eden." Nelton asked her what the girl looked like, and the answer froze his heart for just a moment. Long dark hair, pale skin, dress covered in dirt, and eyes that never blink. He looked at the shelf. The doll was still there, eyes closed, smile gentle, unchanged. He smiled at the girl. Ellen said, "Do not worry, I know how to help her." That night he walked to the edge of a different field, another house, another pain, and whispered to the wind, "We came back. You are not forgotten." And for the first time in many nights, the girl in that house stepped back from the window, her face soft, her hands empty, her eyes beginning to close, because somewhere out there someone chose not to run, not to forget, because every game ends when someone says no more, and this one finally did end.